There must be some unwritten law of the universe that guides the relationships with your neighbors. I think I speak for everybody when I say that there's a specific type of dynamic you only get to have with them. Yeah, I know how you look like. I can't say another thing about you. I have no idea what your last or first name is usually. You only remember one of them. And I know where you live, obviously, but I couldn't name a single thing about your life. Yeah, I'd feel odd if you died, but I wouldn't necessarily feel bad. You get me? There's at least one neighbor you have this relationship with. For me, it is Mrs. Virelli. I did not give a fuck about her, and neither did she about me. We rarely met. I'm divorced in my 30s, and she's in her 60s. Often wakes up before I leave for work to walk her dog, and I never see her after dark. She looks bad, her eyes are sinking into her face, and her hands are rotten and twitchy. A crooked nose, fragile gray hair, almost balding if you asked me. She's a little mean. I greeted her once or twice, and she didn't respond at all. I only know her name because it's written on her mailbox in the building lobby, and I obviously didn't write it here. I changed some letters for anonymity. She lives above me. Sometimes she's really loud for an old lady. My guess is that she has her grandkids over because I hear a lot of stomping at night. She also keeps her TV on at odd hours, blasting all kinds of channels. I have no idea what this lady likes to watch. Again, it makes sense for her to have grandkids over, since sometimes there's kids' channels blasting at full volume. My ceiling literally vibrates. Still, to put that on at 3 a.m. She's kind of a shitty grandma. Once I couldn't stand it anymore and yelled at her to fucking quit it. Hey, ma'am. I got up on the table and banged on the ceiling. Quit it, the fuck. The obnoxious music went on for another 10-15 seconds, then it stopped. I remained on the table waiting. Please stop blasting your shit at 4 in the morning. Sorry, I heard. You banged on the ceiling. Yeah, bet you had to jump on a table to do that. I found it funny. Yeah. Actually, that's what anger'll do to you, ma'am. Since you're such a good guesser, what am I doing now? You jumped down, maybe tripped a little wrong. I'm still on the table. I was lying. I'd actually jumped down, but I didn't trip. She didn't answer. The loud TV never returned. Over the weeks, we started this funny banter thingy where she'd hear some bang and start to make guesses of what I'm doing. I found it ironic that I was half beefing with an old lady with a very deadpan sense of humor. You're gonna eat shredded cheese over the sink, then watch some weird young bullshit horror movie, then call it a night, and go to sleep without brushing your teeth. Yeah, Grandma, that's exactly what I'll do. I'm surprised you're hearing so good after the war. Bet we have the same back problems. At least I have an excuse for that. I'd sometimes pass her in the lobby, and I'd whisper a "Hey, Grandma." She looked around as if she was embarrassed to be seen with me. I found that hilarious. A few weeks passed, and at around 2 a.m., Mrs. Virelli's voice came from above. Can't sleep, kitty. Don't call me kitty, Grandma. I'm not that old. Yeah, you are. Don't provoke me, Jay. I'll come down there to beat your ass. I'll use Jay for anonymity again. I'd like to see you trying silence. It went on for some time. I thought she'd gone to sleep then. I heard a knock at the door. No matter how you put it, a knock at the door at 2 a.m. can never be good. I was also a little freaked out by the possibility that my 60-year-old neighbor might have understood our banter a little wrong. I heard the knock again. I got up slowly, then creeped to the door. I knew I'd locked it, but I still had my doubts. The knock came again, teasing, playful. Bro, what the fuck? I remember thinking. You're pretending not to be home. Came the hushed hoarse whisper. Something about it sent shivers down my spine. Hey, Mrs. Virelli, I don't want you to get the wrong idea. I'm not interested like that. A pause. Jay, do you honestly think I was into you? Oh, not at all. Just wanted to play a little hide and seek. Yeah, no thanks. Her voice was now a little stretched. My body was incredibly stiff. I slowly looked through the peephole and saw nothing, and yet her voice came from behind the door. Hi. Open the door. Let me guess you're holding your breath. I stepped back, eyes wide open, throat dry. I wanted to say something, but the words died down. Then she began to sing. The words were hushed and stretched out, filling the silence like a bad dream fills an innocent conscience. Quiet feet on bathroom tile, mirror holds you for a while. Lights are off, but eyes still see. Something standing where you'd be. I was seriously shitting my pants by now. I stepped back as she continued. Click the lock and check it twice. Once for fear and once for nice. Shut the fuck up, or I'll call the police. She stopped. I creeped back to the peephole and watched the hallway for what felt like hours, but I caught no movement. She either left before I could reach the peephole, literally sprinting or leaping to the stairs, or waited crouched down for hours. I didn't know what was creepier. I didn't sleep all night after that. As dawn creeped into my bedroom, I stared out the window and saw her casually walking her dog as if she hadn't just terrorized the shit out of me. In the sunlight, she seemed almost normal, a regular old lady. Who would have guessed that she was batshit crazy during the night? When I knew she was gone, I finally got dressed and went to work. I was late, of course. I came back after dark and ran into another neighbor. We'll call her Sandra. I practically grabbed her. She was obviously paralyzed and stared into my eyes with a fear I'd never known. I hadn't realized how it looked like a 36-year-old male grabbing my 20-something neighbor and forcing her to look at me. Sandra, I'm sorry, I haven't slept all night. You know Mrs. Virelli? Her eyes tamed down a little. Yeah. She lives above you, sir. Yeah. Did she ever talk to you? She scared the shit out of me last night. Stopped at my door at 2 a.m. and started fucking singing. Sandra frowned. Mrs. Virelli. Yes, we sometimes talk through the walls. It sort of started when I banged on her ceiling to quit blasting the TV so loud. And I thought we became friends after that. But she's fucking crazy. She shook her head. The apartment above you. Yeah, isn't that where Mrs. Virelli lives? Old thin hair. Walks her dog every morning. Yeah, but Mrs. Virelli is deaf and mute. You never noticed she never said a word to us. She never hears us. Her daughter visited her like 2 years ago and told me that there's no way. You've been talking to her. My family went through a good number of pets while I was growing up. Dogs, cats, fish, and even a couple birds. My parents tended to adopt from shelters, and the pound meaning they were often already pretty old, so we didn't usually have any given pet for too long. Because of that, I quickly learned to accept death for what it was. When it was time for them to go, it was time for them to go. My dad would put them in a box, put that box in a car, and take them to get cremated. I'd often wonder why my dad was the one doing it. Most of our pets seemed wary of him scurrying away at his sight, whimpering and tucking their tails. I wondered if they would want him handling their bodies. He'd always come back reeking of smoke and copper, I figured. The cremation process must not be easy. He'd always tell me not to worry, that they were in heaven, watching over me from above. It was on those nights in particular that I would imagine them above my bed, watching me, talking to me. Sometimes it felt like they were reaching down and tapping on my ceiling, like they were in the attic. Of course, I wasn't allowed in there. As a kid, not being allowed in the attic felt like a justifiable and logical rule. Dad's space. Simple as that. That's why there was a padlock keeping the entrance shut. Even my mom didn't get to go up there. She told me that he was just protective over his train models. I wondered if train models made the shuddering noises that I heard sometimes from above, dragging, bumping, scratching. I would hear it on quiet nights. I told myself they were the sounds of the house settling. I got an answer when I was 15. My dad sat me down one afternoon to talk to me, a stern look on his face. Chris, there's a portal to hell in our attic. His wide eyes were trained on me when I started to smile, unable to take his statement seriously. The demon who resides on the other side is named Alossus. He requests regular sacrifices. Dad, what are you talking about? Are you okay? I started to smile, unable to take him seriously. Followed the rules about the attic and about not telling Mom. That was almost 10 years ago. Just over a year ago. My mom called me Dad was missing. Apparently, he had been gone for a good while, and she was just too scared to face the truth. I traveled home to check the house. The house was an unkempt wreck. Plants in the yard and around the house, all gray and decaying. The place looked as if it were antithetical to life. Only a few days into moving boxes, I decided to check the attic. I waited until my mom was asleep and approached the ceiling door. It only took a few light strikes with a hammer to the lock to render years of secrecy obsolete. The ladder swung down with a metallic creak that resembled nails on a chalkboard. The light from my flashlight bounced off dust particles drifting down. I planted one foot on the bottom rung and began my ascent. The thick scent of smoke filled my nostrils alongside a strange, sickly sweet tone like rotting fruit. I peeked my head above the floorboards and shined my flashlight, reflecting wood panels and pinkish insulation. I set the flashlight down and clambered the rest of the way up. The far wall of the room appeared much further away than I expected. It was only when I picked the flashlight back up that a crimson light revealed itself. Covering the entire width of the attic was a giant square painted dark red, multiple intersecting lines that resembled crosses, 2 U shapes, and several circles, one on the outside of each corner and 2 inside. The entirety was maybe 15 feet long, diagonally, and created with incredible precision. My mind conjured images of sigils from movies. I thought about the lion-headed beast again. My toes began to tingle, and something in the recesses of my brain told me to leave. Quickly scanning the rest of the empty attic, it only contained decaying cobwebs and the painting. I descended the steps and shut the attic door quietly. I questioned my mom the next morning. Do you think Dad was ever secretive about the attic? About what he did in there? Well, sure, I suppose it was for his train models. You know that, Mom. I know there weren't trains. Why did he put a lock on it? Honey, don't be silly. It's God's honest truth. Dad once told me what was up there. He said you knew about it too. Her eyes darkened and avoided my gaze. Your father, if I'm really being honest with you, was disturbed. He had mental troubles that we both tried to keep from you. What kind of troubles? The kind that children have no right messing with. The kind that drives people to do things that aren't right. What did he do? What about our pets? She muttered to herself. He kept us safe. He kept you safe. What, honey, I can't. She left the kitchen and avoided me from then on. I eventually decided after another week to leave and go back to my life. I complied with the police as far as I had to and tried to ignore the home. Only another month later, I received a call from the police. My mother had gone missing. I was appalled. Losing both parents in such quick succession was such a shock that I could scarcely believe it. I could hardly even feel upset. I went back home again to work with the police and keep up the house. In my efforts for the investigation, I explained to them what I had seen in the attic the month prior. They asked me to help them check it out again. I nervously agreed. I led 2 detectives into the space during an early afternoon. Upon entering, it was abundantly clear to me that something was different. This wasn't right. This was way bigger than last time. I paced the length of the room. Well, there could be a false wall. Are you sure? Positive. Within a few minutes, I found a hammer downstairs, and we managed to bust a small divot into the wall. Light streamed through. Impossible. The other side of the hole was the outside world. I could make out the front driveway. My stomach lurched, and I decided to leave. The investigation never turned up much, and eventually settled into the backs of cabinets and grew dusty. I continued to stay at the house over the next year as the owner and only possible caretaker. I did what I could for the house, but it never really felt comfortable. Again, the grass in the yard eventually completely gave up, and the surrounding shrubs fell. The overpowering smell of smoke wafted through the home and became constant. That whole time, I avoided that attic like the plague. Of course, I had my theories. About the attic, about the sigil, and the demon my father named. I looked it up low, and behold, Alas's sigil was the very same one above my head. I wondered how real and necessary the sacrifices my father spoke of were. The answer finally thrust itself upon me on a cold, dark night. I was laying in my bed, unable to sleep, when I heard it. Grinding, bending, creaking, the same that I used to hear when I was a kid. I shot up in bed, rubbing my eyes. There is no dad to make those sounds anymore. No trains, no pets, no excuses for my mind to imagine I had to see what was up there. Before pulling the cord to the attic, I considered the sacrifices. How they may settle the demon. It had been at least a full year since my mom had gone missing, a whole year since the last possible time a sacrifice may have been made. Even longer if I have hope for either of my parents' lives. I couldn't go in without a plan. The next day I gathered what I needed. Against my own moral standards, I lured a stray cat with food and captured it in a backpack. Zipping it up, the cat thrashed violently as I slung it onto my back. I grabbed a flashlight with fresh batteries, a kitchen knife, and the same hammer. I had broken a hole in the wall with the attic door. Lowered itself with a slow wheeze, sending a shiver down my spine. A huge cloud of dust, no smoke, fell upon me from the darkness. My body screamed at me not to go. I had to force my statue-like body to clamber up the ladder when my head entered the space. A cold, harsh wind slammed into me, making my eyes water. Looking around, I could see nothing. It was pitch black in every direction. Smoke enveloped the air around me. I timidly raised the rest of my body and took a step forward, directing my flashlight around me. It only settled upon thick smog. No walls were close enough to catch in the light. The sigil remained on the floor in front of me. "Hello," I called out loudly. My voice left my lips and was sucked into the black void. No sound came back other than the wind, not even an echo. I began to walk 10 steps forward, still no wall. Another 10 steps, nothing. 40 more steps, still nothing. My teeth began to chatter, and I wondered if I should go back. I turned around and could only barely make out the glow of the attic door in the distance. I foolishly determined that I should go until I found a wall. In theory, I should be able to bust a hole and leave. Through 500 steps, I stopped counting. After 30 minutes of walking, my flashlight illuminated something. A grayish pile of what looked like thin sticks and rocks covered in thin fabric. When I got closer, I realized what it actually was. A desolate corpse of a large dog, splayed out as if it had died belly up. The bones were darkened, and the pale skin barely draped over the rib cage. The empty sockets of the skull expressed a feeling of dread. I reached back in my memory to all the childhood dogs I owned. This one was unrecognizable. At least a dozen more dogs, and cats of varying sizes and degrees of mummification appeared over the next hour. The further I went, the more prevalent they became. At a certain point, the ground was littered with animal corpses, ones that surely hadn't come from my family. It became difficult to walk without stepping on them. The familiar sickly sweet scent of death took over the smoke in my nose and danced across my tongue and down my throat. I felt the weight of the cat on my back. Argo, ah! I heard pained cries from far. Away as I jutted along, the cries and shouts became enveloping, the sounds of many. It was louder than the wind. The oppressive darkness felt less empty. I could feel the presence of something just outside the cone of my flashlight, waiting to snap me up in huge jaws and destroy me. The crunch of bones snapping under immense weight began to hit my ears. A ragged, ghastly figure appeared. It floated 8 feet above the ground. A woman. I made out the face. It was my mother, barely recognizable. Blackened and decaying, something sharp and shining protruded from her chest. The second figure appeared behind her. Another human corpse floated in line, the gaunt, bony, older visage of my father. When they were 10 feet from me, I realized what carried them: a huge metal spear whose carrier was still invisible. My stomach heaved bile. My legs shook badly. I had to escape. While running, I swung the backpack over my shoulders. Resting over my stomach, I pulled the knife from the side pocket and held it in my right hand, the flashlight trained forward with vibrating hands. I wiped a tear and plunged the knife into the bag. It tore past the fabric like paper, sinking into soft mass. The cat shrieked violently. I exhaled with a shocked groan. I pulled the knife out dark with blood. I stabbed a dozen more times. The thrashing stopped. I felt hot blood soak into my shirt. Almost immediately, the floor below me shuddered like a tree being felled. The horse was gone. I stopped standing still. The smoke dissipated. My flashlight found a wooden wall just a few feet from me, rotating around me. I found walls and a roof all around within a normal attic-sized radius. The sigil glowed bright red. The bloodied knife slipped from my hand. I dropped the backpack onto the sigil. Its glow intensified. I rushed to the ladder, practically flying down. The cool tile floor of the hallway never felt so inviting. I slammed the ceiling door shut and sunk to the ground, sobbing. I've written all this down since then. To get a grip on everything, I don't know much about demons or hell or anything of the occult. I'm not totally sure what I saw, but I won't enter that attic again. It was 10 p.m. when the fog rolled in. I was driving home after visiting a client in a town 80 miles away. It had been a long day, and I struggled to stay focused on the road. The gray vapor engulfed my car like the breath of some otherworldly creature. I knew right away that I wouldn't make it home. I needed to find somewhere to rest, not being familiar with the area. I crept through the fog, eyes wide, until a neon sign flickered at me: BEEPEEPMOTELVACANCY. The "they" in vacancy crackled, threatening to give out. I pulled into the parking lot. It was empty, except for an ancient pickup truck tucked in a corner. The motel itself looked so run down, I wondered if it was abandoned, until I noticed the office light. This was far from a dream accommodation, but it would do for one night. The tiny office smelled of microwaved food and cigarette smoke. No one was behind the desk. My eyes fell on a brochure rack displayed on a rickety table. Through the yellowed paper, a group of friends smiled at each other as they strolled through a theme park, drinks in hand. A sharp pang shot through my body. I immediately looked away and rang the bell. To my surprise, the manager walked in immediately, as if he had been waiting behind the door. He was a willowy man of undetermined age, who looked like he hadn't showered in a while. He glanced up at me from under his brow shyly, and whispered, "Welcome to the Beep Beep Motel, Can I have a room for tonight?" I asked impatiently. "Most certainly, room 6. He handed me a key with slender hands. His nails were upsettingly long. "It's the last room on the ground floor. Breakfast is served in the office from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. He pointed at a crusty coffee machine. "I'm afraid we don't have the internet. Checkout is whenever you need. Enjoy your stay." This must be the seediest motel in town. I thought he hadn't even asked me for an ID. I grabbed the key and hurried toward my room. I passed a small service area. There was a coin, laundry, a nearly empty vending machine, and I stopped short. A phone booth. I hadn't seen one in decades. A faded sign hung on the outside: "Come inside, try our world-famous Afterlife phone." I couldn't imagine anything in this motel being world-famous. "You noticed it?" I jumped. The manager was standing right there, watching me. "Yeah, our guest's favorite feature." He smiled, an almost charming smile. Little gray teeth appeared between his lips. His eyes glimmered. "What's an Afterlife phone?" "Just like the name says, it's a phone to call the afterlife. If you speak into it, your loved ones on the other side will hear you. Is that right?" I snickered, but inside my heart skipped a beat. "That's absolutely right." "And do they talk back?" The man cocked his head to the side. Maybe not sure. Depends if they have something to say. How convenient. With a smirk, I walked away. The room was the kind that seems acceptable at first glance, but upon closer inspection, filth starts popping up everywhere. Dust on the surfaces, stains on the carpet, an unidentified sticky substance on the door handles. I lay on the bed fully clothed, suspecting bugs were hiding in the wrinkles of the sheet. A stagnant smell rose from the pillow and drifted into my nostrils. This would not help with my insomnia. I forced my eyes closed. After 10 years of sleep disturbance, I learnt that I will my body into stillness. Sleep will eventually come, if only for a couple of hours. It did not. There was a restlessness in my heart that would not quiet down. As if guided by an invisible power, I got up and walked back through the cold fog toward the phone booth. The sliding door creaked as I stepped inside. I picked up the receiver. Unsurprisingly, the phone was disconnected. Yet it didn't sound dead. The silence that emanated from it was deep and enveloping, comforting somehow, like a warm breath. I rolled my tongue around my mouth. It was dry as a desert. Would I let yet another day of silence go by? Or could this forlorn phone booth in a forlorn motel on a dark and lonely night be my chance to speak? Hi, Nina. I bit my tongue literally. I tasted blood. I thought about hanging up and walking off. I should have. But the inviting silence on the other end of the line encouraged me to continue. It dawned on me then that all I had ever wanted this whole time was permission to talk about her, to talk to her. Can you hear me? I stammered. How are you? Sorry, stupid question. I'm sorry. I didn't go to your funeral. I never forgot. You. That's what I wanted to say. I never forgot you. Not a day goes by that I don't think about you. I swear I remember your smile that afternoon before it. I'm sorry. I didn't come to your funeral. I could not bear to. I'm sorry. I never forgot. You. Overwhelmed with shame, I threw the receiver back into the cradle and scrambled away. It's been 10 years since it happened, and this whole time everyone in our friend group, Kelsey, Brandon, Chris, Alex, has been acting like she never existed. Her name is never spoken, but we all remember, and we all know how guilty we are. How guilty I am. She was a good girl. If she hadn't started hanging out with us alcoholic bums, she would be living her life right now. I thought she was asleep that night when I left her in the bedroom. A resting angel. I saw the cigarettes and lighter on the bedside, but I didn't stop and think. I didn't think of the beers she'd drunk either, because I had drunk even more. I went into the living room with the others and kept on drinking. Then she came down the stairs, shrieking a Human Torch. The memory coursed through my body. I swallowed it and hid it away. I lay down in the dark. Surprisingly, I began to drift off to sleep. Something had changed in me. Speaking her name had been like pulling a 12-inch knife from my chest. It hurt, but I felt lighter. Her face appeared in my mind's eye. She was so close to me, every detail resurrected from the fog of time. I shot from bed. I wanted to talk to her. Again, with the same force that once pulled me to the bottle, I hurried back to the phone booth. Nina, it's me again. I didn't have time to tell you back then I love you. I know I jumped. Did I really hear that? The voice was faint, coming from far, far away. Hello, I loved you too. The voice was a bit clearer now. It sounded exactly like her youthful, quick-edged, with a slight raspiness that made it so distinctive. A desperate joy exploded in my heart. Nina, is that you? She let out a sad giggle. Just like she used to do. I tried to tell myself that this was nothing more than a parlor trick, but my guts decided otherwise. Trick or no trick, I madly needed to talk to her. Nina, are you at peace? No, no. You said no. The line crackled. Nina, are you there? Nina, I screamed, reaching for her in the strange depths of the phone line. She came back, whispering in the distance. I loved you. You were supposed to protect me. Words and tears came tumbling out of me. I know I should have looked over you. I shouldn't have left you there. I have no excuse. I had seen you smoke in bed before I should have thought about it. I was wasted. You deserved all the good in this world. You lit the cigarette, you piece of shit, I jolted. All of a sudden, her voice was right by my ear, loud and seething with hate. What, that's not true? I suffered the pains of hell, she spat. My stomach dropped. The hair on the back of my neck went up. Nina, I know you didn't deserve it. Please forgive me. You don't know shit, but you will find out. I jumped off. As I ran away, I heard a horrendous shriek ring out from the dangling receiver. I packed my stuff in a flash memory, fragments of that night cut through my brain. Nina asleep on the bed, a cigarette between my lips. Me staggering down the stairs. Where did my cigarette go? I can't remember. Never mind. Let me get another beer. Nina coming down the stairs. A human torch. I drove around for hours. I wanted to escape, but I didn't know where to. The fog got so thick, I couldn't see a thing. I swam through it, not knowing if I was still on the road, if I was still on this earth. The crash split me in two branches. Enveloped in white fumes are now leaning against my windshield like crying corpses. The car won't start anymore. The doors won't open. The windows won't break. The smell of gasoline is getting stronger by the second. I just heard a sizzle. The gasoline is making me sick. I heard another sizzle. It's so hot in here. I think these are my last words. A long time ago, somewhere in the deep dark forests of Western Romania, nested between the mountains and hills, was the place that my ancestors called home. Or so I was told by my mother. My parents always called that place home, despite the fact they barely saw it, let alone stepped foot on its soil. I did not realize it then, but I do now, that they were both lost souls, displaced from their homes. Growing up, I always thought that I was ordinary, no different than anyone else. We were taught as much by the school system. My parents told me of a time when the Communist Party was not in power, how things were different, better. They never glamorized it, just had a strange nostalgia about it. My mother especially. I still recall the empty stare of my mother looking out into the Black Sea. At the time, I thought she worried about father. He was a fisherman. But with hindsight, I reckon many other things were on her mind as well. She worried about me. She clung to me, never letting me go. My father was strict, but I always felt he gave me much more freedom than mother. I'd play with the local kids from the village, venturing farther and farther each time I tried to hide it. When we'd explore the old wrecks of ships, we once found an old, rusty Soviet tank trapped in mud. My mother always told me to watch my step. Landmines were never too far. Never touch weapons. If you dig out any, then the iron curtain fell, and with it any semblance of stability. We had little, but when it all collapsed, we had even less. I have fond memories of that time despite everything, but it started changing quickly. One by one, the families packed their bags and went to the big cities or other countries. Better jobs, better opportunities. With each month the village became quieter and quieter. No longer would you hear the children laugh. No longer would the streets feel alive. Until one day, I was the only one left. I did not understand why my parents never wanted to leave. I wanted to. I was alone. And I always heard stories of how the cities are great. Big, bustling, many friends, to make my parents tried their best to keep me preoccupied. My father gave me work to do. My mother would tell me stories. She was a well-spoken woman. I loved listening to her. All the friends I had, their names and their faces faded with the wind. All of them. But one, I met her on top of a hill that looked out to the vast sea beyond. On top of that hill was a tree and two swings. It was a popular spot for kids and couples alike, but none were left to use it. But her, I was 9 or 10 walking down the coast, swinging a stick in the air, fighting imaginary foes, when I saw a red fabric flutter in the distance, a girl in a red dress sitting on one of the swings watching the sun go under the horizon and bathe the world in shadow, her raven black hair slowly swinging with the wind. She looked older than me, and she was my mother, told me never to talk to strangers. But I never saw her before, and curiosity was stronger than me, so I climbed the hill to the top to join her in the view. When I was close enough to say something, I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Gone was my voice with the wind. I felt afraid, scared. Dimitri, she suddenly said my name. She turned to me, her face pale as snow, her eyes emerald green, almost glowing. I heard so much about you, she said, smiling warmly. The fear I had subsided. I learned that she was a relative that lived in a neighboring village, but she never could visit because she was busy all day and could only visit in the evenings. I never knew we had relatives close by. I knew not to trust her, but I still did. My naive, childish mind trusted her. I felt safe with her. I asked her what her name was. Angela, she said, and on that day I made a new friend. She told me not to tell my parents about her, and that we can meet right there on that hill when the sun crested the horizon, and that she will be there. From that day on, I was there every day. We'd walk sometimes. We played catch. Sometimes we'd play hide and seek. She was a master at both hiding and finding, to an astonishing degree. She was quick on her feet, running like the wind when she ran or chased. I felt that she could find me or catch me without a problem, but she let me have a few victories. She told me about my family. Our family? How once upon a time we were wealthy and lived in a big castle, but how it all changed before I was born. She told me how the world changed so quickly that life became different, faster paced, and that I should cherish the quiet moments. She beckoned me to be at her side, yet, and in moments, she'd let me wander free, joining me in my exploration. I felt as if I had met my long-lost sister. Then she showed me places I never knew existed, hidden bunkers alongside the coast. She told me stories so vivid, it was as if she was there herself. She reminded me of my mother. Whatever I asked, she had an answer. Whatever I thought of, she did before me. Whatever I wished, she knew in advance. I could never explain it, like she knew me better than I knew myself. And when it became too dark, and we said our farewells, my journey back always felt like I still had eyes on me, like I was being observed silently. I'd sometimes see red in the corner of my eye. I'd call her name out, but there was never a response. Neighbors would ask me where I was going or who I was calling out to if they were nearby. One of the older villagers would walk me home. He'd hold my hand, but honestly, I felt safer alone. Months went by, and she became the only thing I looked forward to at the end of the day. I hid it well from my parents. I thought so. At least they never told me anything. They just let me be at home before it gets too dark. Don't worry your mother, my father told me. He trusted me too much. I think perhaps someone else. But that trust soon became mute and void when one of the older villagers, the local butcher, was found dead, pale, with anguish on his face, a bite mark on his body. The scene, I was told, was bloodless, too clean for a wild animal. The very same man who'd accompanied me back home a few times. After that day, I could barely leave my house. I tried and tried to convince my parents. My mother would scream at me. What if that thing hurt you? She'd say I knew better, that I would be safe with Angela. But I couldn't tell that secret to my parents. My father, he used to beat me when I acted up, but after that day he became resigned. He'd usher me inside after I helped him do his work. He'd teach me to work the boat and the fishing gear during the noon. We'd collect firewood, his rifle always by his side, and at night he would be outside, sitting on a chair, a rifle in his hands. The remaining men of the village patrolled during the evenings and night. They ventured into the forest during the day. They never found the culprit, the wolf, or whatever it was. Days turned into weeks, and eventually, one day my dad managed to convince my mother to go out, to run off the extra energy. And run I did that evening, racing the sun as it set under the horizon. But I saw no red dress when I reached the foot of the hill. I walked to the swings, empty, but still swinging from the breeze. I would have guessed I sat on the swing where she once sat staring into the sea beyond waiting, but she never arrived. I felt a tear go down my cheek as I realized that I lost my only friend. I looked down to the ground as I began to weep, but I saw something, a soft glow, a pebble. I went to pick it up, and right under it, buried shallow into the dirt, was a folded piece of paper. I picked it up, dusted it off, and unfolded it. My dear Dmitri, I can no longer accompany you for some time. You needn't worry, though we will see each other soon. I am always close by. Take care of yourself, your mother and father. Sincerely, Angela. Hope was rekindled, but I still cried. I decided to stay for a bit longer, cherishing the sunset, enjoying the light breeze, and hoping quietly that I'd see a red dress in the distance approaching. When it became dark, I went home. It was a lonely trip back. I felt calm. The wind died down, the birds were silent, so calm. Yet I felt something was brewing. I arrived home and was met by my mother in tears, crying. When she saw me, she leapt from her seat and hugged me as if I came back from a war. I could not see my father anywhere. She said that my uncle arrived from abroad and that they met in private. He'll be back soon. After she calmed down, she sat me down, and then she told me a story, the last one I'd hear from her. A long time ago, somewhere nested in the valleys of our old home, lived our ancestors. One of them, a strong and wealthy man, built a strong fortress to defend from the Ottoman Turks. But with each year, the Turks returned in ever greater numbers, and with each year, there was less and less of us. And one winter, nearly 500 years ago, they returned, and that great fortress was burned down. Many died, almost all, save for a baby boy and his father. The man who built the fortress in the first place, he trudged through the blizzard and the cold, holding the reins with one and his baby boy. In the other, he evaded Turkish patrols. He pushed his horse to its limits, and when the animal could not bear it, he pushed himself. The Turks burned everything in their sight, and the nights were becoming colder and colder. The man was on the brink of starvation, but still pushed westward in hopes of finding shelter in friendly lands. 6 days and 6 nights he traveled, my mother told me. But he could not escape the mountains. He could not escape the Ottoman army. He walked with the boy in. His arms, shoeless, torn clothing, frostbite, tearing his flesh, hunger, his stomach, and exhaustion, his entire body. He knew he could no longer go, and he knew that if he died, his son will too. Then he found another victim. He thought a hooded figure lying in the snow against a tree. Wounded, he came close to it and removed the hood, revealing a beautiful woman. But that woman was no ordinary woman, but a beast that prowled those lands, more dangerous than the cold and more dangerous than an entire army. The beast was on the brink of death, starved and purposeless. They spoke the words that were uttered that cold evening were forgotten to time. But one thing is certain. A man gave the beast life, and it gave it purpose. The man sacrificed his soul to the beast. He made an oath of blood with it, and the beast gave the man a promise. The boy and all of his blood will be protected for as long as they draw breath. The oath, my mother called it. Just when the story ended, my father returned with his brother, my uncle. He told me to go to the other room while mother and him spoke. I heard my mother begin weeping again. I learned later that my uncle managed to get a hold of papers, but only for me to leave Romania once and for all, to have a better future. Those last days in my childhood home are a blur. The packing, the last home-cooked meal. I remember my mother and father hugging me tightly. My mother told me to take care of myself, my father to be strong. Looking outside the rear window of the car, I saw the last image of them, my mother hugging my father, her face buried in his chest, and I swear, I saw a tear go down my father's cheek for this first and last time. Years passed by, and I grew up. I learned a new language, made new friends. Eventually, I found a good job in a factory. I settled finally in Germany. I was so busy, I never could visit back home. I'd receive letters and send them back. But the faces of my parents faded slowly when I turned 23. I finally visited, but not for reunion, but for a funeral. My mother soon thereafter. My father joined her as well. I had my uncle, but still I was left alone, in a foreign land with a foreign language. My life became mundane. Go to work, eat, sleep. I barely had time for anything. The shifts were long. I'd enter at sunrise and exit at sunset. I felt as if I was trapped. I was traded. One cage for another more comfortable cage, but a cage nonetheless. I was lonely despite the new names I could call upon, and I never felt safe. Soon after my parents died, I came back to work. And one day after a long shift, I walked to the bus station. The weather was horrible. They said there will be a blizzard. The snow fell, the wind was slowly picking up. No cars, no traffic. Barely anyone left on the streets. I was alone. But sitting on that bench, I felt watched. Soon enough I saw why there was. A group of men approaching the station. I could not recognize them. They were not workers, and their faces were obscured by their hoods and scarves. They joked, seemed a bit drunk. I ignored them. It wasn't the first time I saw a group of drunks and certainly not the last. They came to the station talking, yelling. I was on my phone trying to pay no attention. Then I heard one call me out. Hey, do you have a ciggy, man? He asked me. I nodded. I put my phone away, and I got out one cigarette with my right hand and went to give it to him with my left. But he grabbed my left arm, exposing a watch I wore. Damn mighty good watch you got there. Mind if we borrow? I saw the glint of a blade from another from the group. I tried to reason with them. It wasn't even an expensive watch. I wasn't rich. But before I could say another word, I saw a fist form and connect with my face. I was thrown into the snow. My nose started bleeding. They surrounded me like vultures. One rummaged through my pockets, while the other kicked me. I begged, but of course it was pointless. I just had to hope they'd beat me up. And that's it. So I lie there in the snow in a fetal position, like a helpless fawn. Then they stopped abruptly. Yo, who the fuck are you? Hi, heard one of them say. I heard footsteps crunch the snow in the distance. I was about to open my eyes to look. But as soon as I opened my eyes, the snow flew into the air, right into my eyes, blinding me. And I felt a rush of air hit my face. I heard a thump. One man fell. Others yelled, swore. Then another, with impossible speed. I heard and felt the men fall one by one, screaming. I remained on the ground, holding my head. It was pounding. The snow still irritated my eyes, and my body ached as I felt true fear for the first time in years. Not of the men, but of what was tearing them apart. I heard one shout, then an abrupt crunch. Another was cut mid-sentence by a gurgle, then abrupt silence. I lost track. In mere seconds, only one remained. He was hyperventilating, begging whoever did this to spare him. I could hear by his voice. He was young, a teenager at best. His tough facade vanished and was replaced by a child. His voice cracked. I heard another voice speak in another language, one that I understood. It sounded almost disappointed. The teen was silent. Then I heard a crack of wind and the sound of dragging. Then silence absolute. I cried for the first time in years out of sheer stress. I shook from cold and from fear. No words can describe it. Then I felt a presence above me and a cold touch on my cheek. Dimitri. I opened my eyes. I was sitting on the bench. I quickly checked my pockets. Everything was in its place. I felt sore, but nothing hurt. Did I have a bad dream? I that tired to fall asleep in this cold. I looked around. The snow was undisturbed. There was no blood, no bodies. A dream, yes, but such a vivid dream in such a short period. I never experienced anything like it. I stared at my feet for a few seconds, trying to warm myself up. I still felt watched, but then I heard the bus approach. Entering the bus, I sat down and looked out the window, scanning, watching, trying to find anything amiss, a glimpse, anything. In the back of my mind, I knew I'll find something, but I knew it was all just a childish fantasy. I hoped it was. Then I felt something warm under my nose. I touched it. Blood. I had some tissues thankfully arriving back home. I undressed and sat down next to the window. I got out my fresh pack of cigarettes to see it was already open. Did I smoke one already? I lit up another and cracked open the window so the smoke will go out. I stared outside as the cars passed by. I saw a person stand across the street, a dark coat, a hood. Over their head, a red scarf covering their face, but I could see streaks of black hair. I focused, and I realized green lights stared back. My eyes widened. But as soon as I blinked, a car passed by, and she was gone. I sat there alone, but not quite. Lonely, because I knew a good friend always keeps a promise. My new job seemed just like any other boring office job when I started. You come in, log onto your computer, do 2 or 3 hours worth of work, try to look busy for the rest of the day, then go home. I had done plenty of work like this before, but it had never paid this well. I was making hand over fist while spending most of the day just goofing around. Despite the perks, something troubled me from the outset. After making pleasantries with everyone in the office on my first day, all of my coworkers started to turn on me. If I said good morning to them, they would say it back, and they would engage in a little small talk with me here or there. But as soon I began to walk away, I would notice their expression sour. Their faces would curdle like spoiled milk the moment they thought I wasn't looking as if I was the most disgusting creature they had ever seen. When I walked past them in the hallways, I would catch a momentary glance of pure hatred in their eyes. There was evidently something that this whole office disliked about me, but I had no idea what it could be. This went on for weeks, and it seemed to get worse by the day. I would catch them staring at me like I was a spider they wanted to step on. Sometimes, if they thought that I was out of earshot, I could hear them whispering things about me in a spiteful tone. I started showering twice a day and using more deodorant too. Tried to reverse my status as the office pariah. I brushed my teeth with special whitening toothpaste and even started flossing to no avail. I tried being friendlier and starting up more casual conversations, but nobody had any interest in talking to me beyond the usual greetings. Everything that I did to make myself more agreeable seemed to just make them hate me even more. As if that wasn't bad enough, I started to notice people around town treating me like a leper as well. When I went to the grocery store, I would be met with scowls by the greeter and the cashier. The bank teller wouldn't look me in the eyes when I tried to make a withdrawal. If I took a walk down the street, everyone I passed by would give me that same look of loathing that I had grown used to in the office. My family and friends became just as distant shortly thereafter. Nobody would return my texts or calls, and more than once I saw some of them getting together without me. I know that I hadn't been the best friend since I lost my brother, but I hadn't given any of them the cold shoulder like they were doing to me. After months of this, I gave up on trying to get people to like me and decided instead to become the freak that they believed me to be. I abandoned all hygiene and stopped even pretending to try at work. If people gave me a sour look, I would just insult them to their face. Wherever I went, I was as loud and rude and generally disagreeable as I could possibly be. This only made people hate me more, but at the time I didn't care. It was strange that my boss never tried to fire me for my terrible behavior and foul odor, but I didn't care about that either. I was in a frenzy manic with freedom, and I determined that if this was who they thought I was, then I would at least enjoy it. At last, after a year, they finally broke me. Had been living like a degenerate for the better part of 6 months, and I didn't feel any better. Everyone hated me without exception, and I had given them a reason to. I cried at my desk at work, wallowing in pity and shame. What had I done originally to deserve such intense ostracization from people who did not even know me? That's when I realized something that at the time felt extremely obvious. They knew it was impossible that they could have known what I had done 2 years prior, but somehow they knew. Maybe they didn't even know it consciously, but when they got a look at my miserable face, They knew it immediately. I was guilty and had escaped justice, so this was my karmic punishment. Unspoken exile from every corner of society. They couldn't have really known what I had done. I had an alibi. I covered all of my tracks with precise attention to detail, and the police did not even suspect me for more than a moment. The crime had been perfect, so I had been given the perfect punishment. At that point, I was totally resigned to guilt and went about my life like a robot. I cleaned up to make myself presentable and did nothing but go to work, eat, and go to sleep for weeks. If people looked at me like they usually did with eyes like daggers piercing to my sinful soul, I just accepted it and moved on. I deserved it. After another month, something very strange happened. I arrived at work ready for another day of miserable drudgery, but found that the entire office building was being cleaned out. All of my coworkers were carrying their belongings out of the building, and movers were retrieving everything there was inside: lamps, tables, chairs, desks, computers, you name it. My boss approached me and told me that the company had gone under. According to him, it was a sudden thing that nobody saw coming, and everyone there, including himself, was now unemployed. What really shocked me about what he said was not the story he was telling, but his tone. There was not a trace of spite or disgust. He smiled at me and shook my hand, and I could tell that he meant it. Had the curse finally been lifted? He told me that I needed to just go home and file for unemployment, but I told him that I had some personal items at my desk that I needed to get before I left. He wouldn't let me in the building for some reason. He insisted that I needed to stay outside and pointed me in the direction of where I could find my things. They were packed for me in a cardboard box, wrapped shut with tape. I arrived home with my box and unpacked it, but found something that shouldn't have been there: a classified government document titled Operation Ostrich. I wondered how this could have wound up in my stuff and decided to peek inside to see what it was about. Revealed everything about what had happened. Ostrich was a CIA experiment to see if intense feelings of hatred toward a certain individual would spread through the air like a plague. My coworkers had been paid to fake feelings of loathing toward me, but soon their pretend feelings became real. The CIA had agents discreetly monitoring my life, watching me everywhere to see if the disease would spread. Despite having never talked to my coworkers, the townspeople began to hate. Then my loved ones. The agency was astounded at how successful the experiment had been. Even the people overseeing the project found themselves succumbing to the psychic virus. However, at the time when I had finally been completely broken down, the CIA documented that something changed. They noted that I had seemingly accepted my fate, which only amused them at first. Strange things began to happen soon after, though, which they could not explain: hallucinations of a man wrapped in plastic. They started to get reports from my coworkers that they would see the man in plastic walking through the halls at the office. Then he would disappear. One of them said that he saw the man in his bathroom mirror smiling back at him. Operation Ostrich only ended because people started to die. They would report that they saw the man in plastic, then would be found inexplicably ripped to pieces. This allegedly happened to 2 of my coworkers and a few of the agents who were monitoring me. With that many dead, the CIA decided to cut their losses and move on. The hallucinations that they saw troubled me. It couldn't be that they knew. There was nothing in the document about what I had done. For all they knew, I was just a regular goody two-shoes. But what they saw and what they think killed those people. Was it possible? I walked out of my house and into my backyard to the hiding place under the trees, where there once was a bed of flowers. There was now an open grave. What happened next as I stood over that hole in the ground couldn't have been real in a sane and rational world. Yet the scars across my face where his nails dug into my flesh remind me that this is reality, and I'm still in my personal hell. I don't have long to live. He's going to come back. As I looked into the grave, I heard squishy footsteps behind me. I turned to look, and I saw the man wrapped in plastic lunging toward my face. I heard him say, "Brother, I missed you."